Hello everyone, I'm Peter Eyes and welcome to this joyous episode of the Stages podcast. The Australian tenor Gregory Dempsey was born in Melbourne in 1931. He originally trained as a baritone but made his debut as Don Ottavio in Don Giovanni in 1954 with National Opera of Victoria. In 1955 he won the £1,000 Lever Award, a commercial radio award. He followed this as a grand finalist in the celebrated Mobile Quest. When the Elizabethan Theatre Trust Opera was formed in 1956, he took part in its season of 4 operas. The following season he appeared in the productions of Tosca, La Bohème and The Tales of Hoffmann, and in the 1958 season sang principal roles in Carmen, The Barber of Seville and Fidelio. His immense talent also transferred to the small screen, where Greg became a permanent member of the chorus for Channel 9 television singers. An extensive career saw him traverse stages around the world, from the Sydney Opera House to the houses of San Francisco, Covent Garden and the Scottish Opera. His clear, perfectly tuned tenor voice was suited to a plethora of different repertoire and styles. From Monteverdi to the most difficult contemporary compositions, Gregory Dempsey made them relevant to every audience. Greg is a charming gent. He has an engaging sense of humour and a sharp recall of the career that has brought him much joy and accolade. It was a real treat to meet Greg and record this inspirational conversation for Stages.
And now it's time for us to welcome our next competitor for 1956. 25-year-old tenor from Abbotsford, Victoria, Greg Dempsey. Well, Greg, this is the first chance we've ever had of hearing you, isn't it?
Yes, Curtis. I've never sung in Mobile Quest before.
Have you done much singing?
I never seem to stop.
Even at work?
Oh, I manage a few bars even there.
Can't stop you. What is your work, incidentally, Greg?
I'm a driver.
Driver. Mobile gas user, of course.
Never use anything else.
Good lad. Well, now for your song. Contestant number 15 in Mobile Quest, Greg Dempsey, sings Lolita.
Now, as you can see, it's not a tape machine.
No.
No, it's digital.
Ah.
Right. But you bought a tape machine once, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
Why did you buy it?
When
they were first coming out.
Well, it was when they first came in. I think I was about 23 or 24, and people were saying to me, why don't you get a tape recorder? You can hear yourself and all that. And so I got the tape recorder, and I was at that age, I sung quite a few things, and thought, well, possibility I might just be the next Caruso. I bought the tape recorder. I was quite convinced, but I wasn't the next Caruso. And it's been confirmed right through the years with many critics.
Do you listen to critics?
Well, I suppose in the end, you only remember the bad notices.
Don't you? Yeah, that's
do,
true.
And I think most people do.
And within your own circle, I guess you have your own people, your teachers, your colleagues who you listen to and trust.
Yeah, your mother's your best one. They will always say you're great. I've never had a bad notice from my mum.
Go straight to
or
your
my
mum.
dad. My wife was, yes, that was pretty good tonight. I said, only pretty good. Well, yes. You know.
Well, I suppose if anyone, yes, it's the wife who can be direct
Yes,
and honest.
yes, she was good.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Oh,
yeah.
good. Well, Greg Dempsey, you've had a phenomenal career in opera, singing all around the world. You're now 88. Do you still manage to have a sing?
89.
89.
I've had a birthday since you
Oh,
was
right.
last told.
Since we last talked, well, happy birthday. You still manage to have a sing around the house or in the shower?
I because of my hearing, I don't know what whether that affects it, but I just no, I don't.
Right.
But if
Do you miss it?
Hmm?
Do you miss it?
I don't miss the anxiety that as the older I got, it started to cause me. As you know, as your voice starts to lose its, punch and all that stuff,
It's not as reliable, perhaps.
No, indeed. And I always had a good ear for pitch, and when I could hear myself not quite in tune, that used to really worry me.
Yeah.
So, and I think all those things contribute to you saying, "Oh, well, I can't do it." You're better off if you don't have a good ear, or you could just sing on oblivious. I've got friends that are 90 that are still singing. I won't make any comment.
So when did you decide to step away from professional singing?
It was amazing. I was singing My Fair Lady. I was singing a role called Jamie. And it was
which is one of Doolittle's sidekicks.
Yes.
Yeah.
And was singing with a little bit of luck. And it was down at Werribee. And there was a good cast. Susan Johnson was singing the...
Eliza.
And Anthony Warlow. I forget who else. I don't know if it was Noel Ferrier.
As you do, little.
Doing the Alfie.
Yep.
And it was about 108 degrees the day when we went down there, and we had cabins that had air conditioning and all that sort of stuff. And so you'd get called on stage, and they had umbrellas and all that. It was, it was so hot. And anyway, we finally started the show at about 8 o'clock. It was still hot. And halfway through the first act, the wind changed. And it was freezing. And I can remember Anthony Green.
The conductor?
Yes.
Yeah.
Was that Anthony Green?
Yes. Yes.
I don't know if Anthony's right.
No, his name's
I know
Green,
it's
though.
Green.
Yeah.
He ended up giving Susan his coat, his white jacket, because it was so cold.
Yep.
And then at the next act, the wind changed again, and we got the smell from Werribee.
The slaughterhouse there, or
What do you call it all? The sewerage.
The sewerage, of
sewerage
course.
farm.
Yes. Yep.
And I thought, that's a good thing, good time to go. There's a good comment on it all for me. So that was the last time. I thought I was about 64, I think, 65 then. Yeah.
Right. My Fair Lady, not a bad score to bow out on.
Terrific. Yes, most... I suppose because of the text of what's his name?
Alan J. Lerner. Alan J. Lerner or Bernard Shaw. First.
Bernard Shaw.
Yeah.
Bernard Shaw is just remarkable. I'd never thought about it until I was in that show, and the words remain, all the dialogue and the words that are just wonderful.
It's genius.
Yeah.
What let us go
The voice is very temperamental and can be affected by air conditioning, can't it? And particular
A
climates.
lot of people say that. I had one experience in the Sydney Opera House where it was very hot, and I forget what I was singing. I can't remember, but I went in the afternoon, and I used to get into the theatre pretty early if I was doing I think it might have been Boris Godunov or something, and I went to sing, and I thought, oh God, what's wrong with my voice? And another friend of mine was in it, Robert Allman, and I said, gee, oh, my voice is. He said, oh, you've just come in from the heat, and he said, you've dropped about 25 degrees, and he said, you'll be all right in half an hour, and go and have a coffee. I really panicked. I could not,
have control over it, or
no, just that your voice, the chord, something had happened to the chords that were
they
making
tightened.
Tight, yeah. And sure enough, half an hour later, I was all right. But it does affect, the heat and sudden change of temperatures affect the voice.
I guess all singers are individuals, and they know what they need and what to avoid.
Yeah.
You started your career as a baritone, I believe, and then you became a tenor.
I say a baritone, but I think I started singing. I sang from, I can't remember when I didn't sing. Probably I had my first lesson at about 7. But I went to learn the piano, and the piano teacher got me singing and took me to her cousin, whose name was Mavis Kruger, and because I was so young, she didn't want to push my voice, so she just kept me singing songs within a range that, so I suddenly was digging in and dropping the larynx and making those sort of sounds, but I think I probably was always a tenor, but I sang. I won the Footscray aria singing Airy 2 from the Masked Ball.
Yeah. How old were you?
About 16 to 17.
Right.
Yeah.
So Stedfords and those sorts of competitions, they're great for young singers,
Ballarat,
aren't they? Royal South Street?
Yes.
Yep.
Never made I don't think I ever made the first cut of the aria.
Some aria.
No, never got there. I think I won something up there, an art song or something.
It's a beautiful old theatre there, isn't it?
Yes, wonderful. Yeah. Wonderful
Great
place
to sing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you didn't stick with piano then, I guess?
No, not for long. No. I would, it was those days. It was, I suppose that was the 13. It was sort of around, the war was still on.
Yep.
And, we didn't have a lot of money, and so the piano got dropped and the singing was taken to the forefront.
Was it a musical household? Did your mum or dad sing or play instruments?
All houses in those days had the radio was always on, and there was always singers and pop singers, but like Nelson Eddy was always singing, and all these sorts of James Melton. I suppose you've never heard of these people. But,
Nelson Eddy, absolutely.
But James Melton was, a marvellous tenor. He sang Traviata at the Met, I think. So, but he was they were very popular, those sort of voices, and I suppose I mimicked those sort of things.
Bit of a magpie.
Yeah, very much. Definitely magpie. Yeah.
So there was classical music coming through the radio as well.
Oh,
That's
yes,
the popular stuff,
yes. Oh, indeed. I can remember hearing Beethoven. I remember having quite an experience. One Saturday afternoon, it was raining, and I think I found out what it was, the music, and it was the Egmont Overture.
Yeah.
And this suddenly, I was about 14 or 15, suddenly this sound of this thing did something to me, but I always had a feel for music. You know?
The right music can really hit the soul, can't it?
Oh, yes, indeed.
Do you remember the first opera you saw?
Yes, it was at the at Her Majesty's. It was. I think it was Cav and Pag, with an Italian opera company, which would have been, I would have thought, in the very early 50s or late 40s. So I can't remember. I can remember going right up to the Gods to see it. I can remember the bloke Eldro Ferracuti was the bloke. He sang the Turidu and the Carnio in it. So he was great. Yes, that was always. Those two operas always make me feel like Saturday afternoon at the a serial at the picture theatres or something. It's that wonderful, you know.
Well, that's the thing about music, isn't it? It can take you to a particular time and place or memory or event.
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
So Australia was playing host to many visiting opera companies, I guess, before.
Well, I think that I'm pretty sure it was called the Italian Opera Company. It was Williamson's.
Right.
I think Williamson's were behind it,
and of course in Melbourne, Gertrude Johnson had the.
Yeah, well, I sang a lot with them. I sang all my early stuff. I think the first thing I sang at the National Theatre was Donna Tavio. And then I think I sang an opera called Tiefland that no one's ever heard of, sort of thing, except Brian Castle's Onions. He knew about it.
He's a great historian, isn't he? Yeah.
And I think I sang Tamino up there, and I think Butterfly, I think. Yeah. Turidu, I think. I can always remember Gertrude Johnson. She wanted to have the death of Turidu on stage, and she said, "You rush onto the stage, clutching yourself, and you fall." You see, she was the director.
Yeah.
I rushed on the stage. No, that's not right. She said, "I'll show you." She always wear these big hats with lots of feathers and pins in them, you know, those old-fashioned. And so she rushed on the stage and fell on the floor to thunderous laughter from everyone because her hat stayed still in the same spot, you see. It looks so funny. I can always remember that.
So were there lots of classical singers around at this time when you're beginning your career in Melbourne?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. People, Glenda Raymond was always...
She was married to Hector Crawford,
yes,
wasn't she? Yeah.
she was always, you know, they were doing a series, you know, she was always singing at concerts at the... Well, there wasn't the Maya Music Bowl then, but that used to be on the other side near a bit of a lake. I remember there was a lake there because I sang... my first opera with Hector Crawford was Carmen. I sang Donazé with Hector conducting.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think who was in the... a girl called Muriel Luke, who was a beautiful mezzo-soprano, and Valerie Collins-Varga, who I think she's still alive. She had quite a career in Germany, but she sang the Michaela in it. And I think a bloke called Doug Stutchberry was the Escamillo. Yes. But it was you know, that was my first big time job, I think.
Here I stand, my constitution sound, my faith until dead, my victory, my heart right. I leave the industrious apprentice in the country book. I submit to the grudges oath. I slave through a lifetime to enrich others, and then be thrown away like a lord bone. Not I have not brave doctors, a assure us that good works are of no avail, for heaven predestines all. In my fashion I may profess myself of their party, and herewith entrust myself to fortune.
Well, as well as being a classical singer, you're also singing at Channel 9.
Oh, yes,
One of the Channel 9 singers?
Well, what happened, I joined the AO, or the Elizabethan Trust as it was, in 56. I'd won a thing called Australia's Amateur Hour that previous year, which was a
radio show? Or?
Yes,
Yeah.
it was an Australian, went all over Australia. I won the final thing, and it was £1,000. It was
That's not
huge.
bad. Yeah.
I'll tell you, put it into context. A Holden cost £1,100, so £1,000 was the price of a car. So by today's, it was probably worth today 50 or 60,000.
That's very
It was a
impressive.
lot of money.
Yeah.
So I then left the job I was in and was tried to learn Italian with people and all that, because I knew I had this, I had an audition for the Elizabethan Trust and they offered me chorus and small parts, and I said thank you very much, and that was started in about May. So I've lost the track of what I was going to say.
The Channel 9 singers?
Oh,
Yeah.
yes. For the first 4 years, I was with the AO up till I think 59 or 60. That was every year, and I worked up. I started singing Monostatos and Don Curzio, I think I sang. Then I sang Giacchino in Fidelio. What else did I do? Luigi, and that was the first big thing I did with them. And I think Don Ottavio, and by the time they got to the fourth season, they put it off for a year. But they put a few singers on retainer, and I was lucky. I was on a 20 quid a week or something like that until the next season. But I got through Ron Rosenberg, who I'd sung a lot of concerts, who was a pianist, and he was run the choir at Channel 9. He said, he said, we're starting a group of singers. Do you want to come and be in it? So because I had the year off, I had that, and that's how I went into the Channel 9 singers. I was with them for about best part of a year, I think. Yeah.
What sort of repertoire would you be singing?
Oh, backing all sorts of Bill McCormick and pop singers and, boop boopy doopy doop, But Ron, he did a lot of American style choral things that were pretty good, pretty good tight harmony where you couldn't no vibrato, you couldn't do that, so to do all the blending. So that in a way was it was advantageous to do that. It got me walking around the set and trying to do things.
And television was a very new medium too,
yes,
wasn't it? Yeah.
Graham Kennedy had just hit the mark. Yes, I think it started in 56 and this was about 59, 60, I think, around that time.
Yeah. Is that where you met your wife? Because she was a singer too.
Yes, that was in about 66 that I'd come back for because the theatre closed in London during July and August. I was singing in Saturday, I was singing in San Francisco, I was singing the Macropolis Case with Mari Collier, and I came back via Australia, which is a long way, I suppose, so I could have 2 or 3 weeks in Melbourne with my folks. And I rang up Channel 9 and said I was back, can you give me a gig, So I sang a couple of solo spots there, and she was in the chorus then, and that's when I met Anne, and lots of my colleagues, Murray Medadi and Brian Curran, they were all in the chorus, and they thought that Anne and I would be a good match, and they took us out to, had some things set up to go out for an evening. But we got to know one another, and then she came to England later on, got ill and had to come back to Australia, but then I came back to Australia again in 1970, I think, and that's when we got together and got hitched.
Yeah.
Who are made to love and kiss, and who am I to interfere with thee? Does it say, who can say? But I know the good God made them so. Am I ashamed to follow nature's way? Shall I be blamed if God has made me gay? Does it say, who can say, I'm a man, and kiss them when I can? Yes, I have.
When you started singing, did you have a day job? Did you have to support yourself singing?
Yes, I started off as of all things, a silversmith.
Oh, right.
I was what called a maker-up. I used to, with gas, like a gas thing, flame, and you use solder, and like silverware was very popular. It's not in now. No one wants silverware.
You have to polish it.
Yeah, of course. And used to do all soldering and all this sort of stuff. And then I did a quick electric welding course and worked out at Sutton Tool and Gauge for a while as a maintenance welder. But then the fumes from the welding was really worrying my nose and throat, so I gave that away and drove a truck for 3 or 4 years around Melbourne, and that was before the 56 when I won the
Yes, the big prize, and allowed you to go and pursue your passion.
Yeah.
So you're a Melbourne boy. You're born in Melbourne?
Yes, born in Collingwood. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you have a favourite composer, classical composer? This might be two. There might be one that you like singing, and there might be one that you like listening to for pleasure.
Yes. All right, yes. Bach, Bierling and Beethoven, I think I'd put it that way.
Oh, there you go. Well, you're allowed to have three.
Yeah. But there's many others. I just love Tchaikovsky, and I love the French Ravel, and I just like all music, yes.
Well, your career has encompassed many different repertoire and styles, from Monteverdi through to contemporary compositions. Do you have a favourite style that you like singing?
I suppose, like everyone's career, you think you're mapping it out, but it's mapped out for you. And I always, if someone said, will you do this? Oh, yes, thanks, I'll do it. That sort of thing. I suppose basically I would have loved to have been Rodolfo and Cavaradossi. I would have loved to have been those parts. But I realised very early that I wasn't. But I think the modern repertoire suited me as much as I seem to have had a bit of a flair to be able to get into characters, anti-heroes, sort of Peter Grimes and those type of people, you know. And the Janacek operas were like that too, with Macropolis Case and House of the Dead, and I did an opera towards the end called The Excursion to Mr. Bruchek, and that was just phenomenal to do. I think those sort of things suited me. I was not a matinee idol.
Right, a character man.
Well, yes, definitely. Yeah.
Were your folks happy about you pursuing a career in the arts? And
Always 100% behind me. I had tremendous help from my parents. My dad had a bit of a voice. He was had an Irish tenor sort of voice.
Yeah.
Yes, he just wanted to you know the way Irish people sing.
Yeah, yeah. That soaring
Yes,
tenor.
yes, yeah.
Beautiful. How'd you go with learning languages? Because as an opera singer, you're required to sing in many languages.
It wasn't till later that I sang in languages. Because I went, the Australian Opera or Elizabethan Trust did everything in English, and then I got the chance. I was singing in Brisbane. I was singing. What was I singing? I was singing Goro in Butterfly, and then on the evening of that night, I was singing Luigi in Cabarro, and the Norman Tucker, who was the boss of Sadler's Wells, was out here because they brought Merry Widow, Orpheus in the Underworld, from Sadler's Wells to tour here, and he was up there, and he was in the theatre, and that night he'd heard me sing Goro, and then he heard me sing Luigi, and the guy singing Ranuccio in Gianni Schicchi got sick, and I was the understudy for that. So he heard me sing 3 things.
On the one day?
Yes, yes.
Wow.
Yeah. And he said to me, you know, are you interested in coming to England? He said, I haven't got any spots this year for you, but possibly next year. It was the year that he'd asked Neil Easton and Heather Macmillan and I think Donald Smith was going back to. They all went back that year. And sure enough, I got a telegram about 6 months later offering me a contract to sing Yanik in Bartered Bride. So I was the most fortunate person in the world because I'd sung for Tucker at the auditions and he couldn't remember me.
Right. But when you do something
special, but he saw me
special,
on the stage.
3 roles in a day.
Well, yes, I think that helped. Yeah.
What an audition. And as a young singer, you've really got to go abroad at that time, I guess, to make your mark.
Yeah, well, everyone said you had to, so I would never have gone, I think, on my own volition. I never had the guts to do that. I think the singers that do that got tremendous courage to do that. I would just got this opportunity which I couldn't knock back. There I was with a year's work in England at £30 a week and sort of things.
The opportunity to travel and have an adventure.
Yes. And I started off on a 22-week tour of England. I didn't sing in London until 63. This was 62, and I had 22 weeks to hone Yanik. I'd never sung Yanik before, and so when I sang it in London, I'd sung it 22 times round, all of England. So it was tremendous. So that first thing I did in London, well, they weren't saying this is the new Caruso, and they said that because Don Smith had sung Bartered Bride the year before me, they said, while Gregory Dempsey's not got the honeyed voice of, he's nonetheless quite impressive in this thing. So I was very fortunate to.
The role was well and truly sung into your voice, I suppose.
Yes,
by then.
yeah. Which is a huge thing with anything. No one sings a role that the first night they're inside it, you know.
Yeah.
Unless you're Jonas Kaufman, I suppose. You could do it.
The Elizabethan Theatre Trust Opera Company, which is the ground floor of Opera Australia.
Yeah.
What was it like in those days, starting off? You're really the vanguard of singers.
Yes.
That was
Look, there were still people in those. There was John Germain, Neil Warren Smith, Rosalind Keane. There was so many people that all became. They were like your relatives. Because we toured and it was the first one and we were all so eager, all in our mid-20s to 30 maybe, and wanting to really shake the world up, you know. Any opportunity you got to do anything then was great. It was great that started up.
And who was the leadership at that time? Who were the directors that you were working with?
Stephen Haag was the director of the company, and I think the boss was a bloke called Robert Quentin. I think he was an Englishman. And Geoffrey Chard was in that season, and his wife, and there were, Stanley Clarkson, a bloke that had been an English base, Kevin Miller, very good. He'd come back from England, and so had who was the other one? John Cameron, who was a marvellous baritone. John Cameron, I mean, so underrated. You know, wonderful voice.
Yeah.
And so that was that year. And while it was all Mozart opera, it was wonderful to. Especially, I appreciate Mozart so much now that I didn't at that time. I wished it had been La Bohème and Tosca or something.
Well, in the following season, you're starting to do Tosca and Bohème and Tales of Hoffmann and building up your repertoire.
Yes, they did later on. They did all those operas. Yeah. And
then 58, Carmen and Barbara
Yeah,
Seville.
I think I did Dan Cairo in that. And I did Spoletta in Tosca with John Shaw, marvellous Scarpia he was, you know.
Yeah.
And I think Joan Hammond, she was wonderful. I always remember Joan Hammond, I was doing Goro in Butterfly, and I can always remember Joan Hammond and Don Smith singing that duet at the end of the first act, and just standing on the side of the stage. I can remember with John Germain or Neil Warren Smith, and just saying, Jesus, isn't this bloody fantastic?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fine. You can say what you want to say.
No,
I bet it was bloody fantastic.
It was.
Yeah.
It was. Well, I'd never heard two voices as exciting as that, you know.
And being able to merge, I suppose,
Yes.
too, and sound.
And she had such a wonderful voice. She was underrated, Hammond. I mean, gosh, she could sing anything. And Don Smith, I mean, I think Don Smith had, if he had the right person to control him and look after him, I think he would have been, for me, I'd rather hear his voice than Pavarotti.
Yeah.
Pavarotti's a fantastic singer, don't get me wrong. Yeah. But Don had something in his voice that, and he had an enormous range, and it was so rich. Oh, God, he's tragic, Don, that,
his career didn't reach the heights.
Well, no, he sang Califf at the Garden, and, I mean, he stepped in and did 2 performances or something of Califf and brought the house down with all the big arias, because he had that that was a real Verismo voice he had.
Yeah.
And tragedy.
The magic that makes it work, that magic I could not
the helm, and spoke the charm. He showed me, alas, I learned too late, mighty spells lay in that helm. My sight, he vanished, and out of the darkness led invisible blows. And that's all the thanks my work has done.
Who have been your singing teachers, Greg, in your career?
I learned with this lady, Mavis Kruger, who was tremendous help to me from when I was about, I suppose, I can't remember, either 12 or 13, around that age. And then I studied with Henry Portnoy and his wife, who were in Melbourne, and they were teaching. They'd come out from Vienna, with once the Germans got into Vienna, they were Jewish, and of course they came via Singapore to. I think he was at the Singapore Conservatorium for a while, and then when the Japs came, they came to Australia.
Yeah.
And he was a wonderful pianist and coach, and she was she'd been quite a successful soubrette in Vienna, and she really knew about voice. She really helped people with their voice.
There's a lot of untold stories there too. Or I guess we're aware of them too. But those immigrants who fled war-torn Europe, etc.
Yes.
Or the dancers who stayed with Belarus,
Yes.
who then sort of invested in Australian arts and culture and created a new generation of performers.
It was amazing that period.
Have you taught yourself? Have you been a teacher?
Yes, I have. I think I learnt more about singing, teaching than I ever learnt myself. And yes, I taught for about from about 86 till we moved here, and I hadn't taught really since for the last 10 years, but that's the music studio out there, and my wife had the room up there. She was the psychologist.
Oh, right, so her office.
So she was doing psychology, and I was teaching people there.
At the other end of the house.
Yes, and the singers came in the back gate. There was a back gate there, so they could come in.
Different entrance
clients
for the singers.
came in the front.
And
there was one funny day where I was teaching a girl, and she had some problems. She said, "I wonder if I could see your wife." I said yes. So she rang up and she had a couple of sessions with her, and she'd come to me for lessons and that. And then one day she came to the back. She said, "Oh, I can't get in the front." And I said, "Oh, well, that's all right." And she said, "I haven't come for singing, I've come to see your wife."
But singing teachers can sometimes fill that
Well,
role, can't they? There's an intimate
Oh,
relationship. You share a
definitely.
lot. Yeah.
Oh, yes. The actual...
The psychology of unlocking the voice.
Yeah, everybody, like I'm sure any teacher of anything has that same, that rapport. You don't have it with every person you teach, but some people, you can tell that you've got a real rapport, that they can hone in on what you're saying, and you can feel their problem, with whatever they're wanting to talk to you about. Yes, lots of times, not much singing done, but lots of psychology. Yeah.
As a singer, I imagine you need representation as well. You need an agent. Did you have an agent?
Yes, I had an agent. Up till I was about, I think I'd been at Sadler's Wells or English National Opera it was then, for about 13 years, and I was getting lots of offers for outside work, and I was with an agency there called Ingpen and Williams, which is funny because it was started by a woman called Joan Ingpen, and Williams was her dog.
Oh,
Anyway, I went on to a guest contract at the English National Opera, and I was singing things like Cassio in Wales and Dimitri and quite a few things with Scottish Opera. I was singing, what did I sing with them there? Oh, many things, all pretty well. Albert Herring, Peter Quint in Turn of the Screw, and I sang the Trojans of all things, Aeneas, with Dame Janet Baker at the Edinburgh Festival, and I think I was a bit overparted, but I think I got away with it. I think a bit, but, and I think I thanked Florestan there too with Helga Dernisch, and that was an extraordinary meeting because Florestan doesn't come on till the second act, and because I was standing in for another Australian, Ronald Dowd, who was sick or something. They said when I got it, I don't come in till halfway through the first act because it's the first act's I think about an hour and so of Fidelio. So I got in there and they said, "Oh, we want you to meet Madame Dernisch." So I was in my rags and that as Florestan, and I went round to the dressing room and she said, "How are you?" Put her arms around me. She was about 6 foot.
Really?
And when I got on stage, I'd sung my stuff and we came out and we were doing the Namen Lose Freude thing, the big duet, and she rushed at me and embraced me, and I'm sure my feet came off the ground.
Because you're not a tall fella either, are you? You're not a tall fella.
No. I was. I think my passport said 5'8.5". I don't know where the half come from. I think I must be about 5'5" now. I've definitely shrunk, but I used to get on the tiptoes. Right. I'd learned how to. Stefan Haag taught me. He says you never stay flat-footed. You've got to be on the toe of one and the heel of the other, and he said, you give yourself another 1.5 inches. He was very...
It's not bad advice.
It was very, very clever. Most singers do that, other than wear lifts.
Right, that's cheating.
I've never done that.
Who is it, that figure so radiant and bright, that vision arising before me? An angel in heavenly light, with soft words of comfort and joy to restore me. An angel, Leonora, an angel, my wife, yes, whom God sends to lead me to heavenly light. I see her in heavenly light. An angel in heavenly light. I hear her with soft words of comfort restore me. An angel, Leonora, an angel, my wife, yes, an Leonora, my angel, my wife. She leads me to freedom and heavenly light, yes, my Leonora, my angel, my wife. She leads me to freedom and heavenly light, heavenly light.
You've mentioned a hell of a lot of roles, Greg, in this conversation. How long would it take you to prepare a role?
Well, I was a bit. I'm not academic. I don't play the piano or anything.
Right.
I can play scales and odd chord, but I always have had a. I think it's all those years of listening to radio when I was young and at work. I've always had a quick memory of things, and so if I had a good repetiteur that would,
Bash out the right notes and bash out the right notes for you.
Yes, early on, rather than some repetiteurs just play what's written and leave you for dead, but good ones that'll help you. With that sort of repetiteur, I'd learn something very quick, very fast. I remember when they were in about the second or third season of the AO, they were doing Othello, and that was with Joan Hammond, and Ron Dowd was doing the Othello, and Raymond MacDonald was singing Cassio, and I was in the chorus then, and Ron got sick, as a lot of Othellos get sick, hell of a role, and so there was a performance on the Monday, and I think I have an idea. The Thursday performance was when Ron practically couldn't get through the role. He sang the last act falsetto or something, and they said that there was a conductor called Georg Tintner who was a repetiteur then. He wasn't conducting, and he said, we've got to teach Ray MacDonald Othello, and we've got to teach Greg Dempsey Cassio. So from Friday till Monday afternoon, we were working with Georg Tintner, 3 or 4 hours a day. So I learned Cassio then. Cassio's not a big role, but it was still quite a lot to learn. And Ray had learnt he was understudying the Othello, but he'd not sung it. And so we went on, but I made one blue. I didn't take the fazzoletto, the handkerchief on, which
so it's a crucial prop.
Yes, indeed. That's what makes Othello go fast. The handkerchief there.
Yes, Desdemona
he
has
has
done
the
wrong.
epileptic fit when he says it. I come on and because I give it to Desdemona, I give the thing to, and I said to Joan Hammond, and she said, she got her hands around me and made out, and she I don't know what she had, some fabric or something, and she pulled out something, and so
that was the hanky for the performance.
So Othello went spare and saw the handkerchief, and
they're the moments that make it fun, don't
they?
They
are.
For performers.
It's like singing Don Jose. Don Jose is awful when he goes on stage. He's got to have a sword, money, letter. There's about 6 props. Rose, and I forgot the rose there. I was singing with English opera, and sing, see this flower. And the girl was a girl called Anne Howard. Oh, forgot the rose, how was she? Yeah.
If you place enough belief that it's there,
yes,
it'll
was
be
there. I could see it.
Did you? Are you superstitious in the theatre? Did you have an opening night ritual, something that you had to do every time you opened a?
No, but the older I got, the earlier I got into the theatre, especially I was doing quite a lot of Wagner, and I found with master singers, which used to start at 5:30, because it's such a long opera. I was, Anne said, you know, why you get all dressed up? I said, I'm going into the theatre, and she said, it's only 1:30.
My lord, the master singer's way cannot be found in just one day. In Nuremberg, the finest master is now a great and sad. For over a year he has taught me so that a scholar I wax to make love and poet's art. Oh, daily I learn my heart, as the skull I hammer, then all the vowels and consonants stammer. Next must the thread be stiff with wax, then must I learn it rhymes with sax. With thread and needle make stitches neat, and then I learn about time and beat. With feather and last, the slow, the fast, the fun, the light, good or bright, the scissors, the snippings and workings, the pauses, the forms, the flowers and bones. I learn all this with care and pains.
And I said, oh, look, by the time I get in there, and we lived best part of 3/4 of an hour trip out of London to get into the theatre. And I found that the older I got, I was worried about having
Being
to
late,
rush and
yes. Find a park.
And it's all stress.
Yeah.
That was the hardest thing as I got older, singing, was the stress. I can remember the last time I did those funny characters, Benoit and Alcindoro in Bohème. I hadn't done it for a couple of years, and I went back, and the rehearsals were a nightmare, trying to think of the Italian, because I'd never sung. They weren't. German wasn't too bad. I could, because I'd sung the David and Mima in the Ring, and that and Florence, and the German wasn't too bad for memory, but Italian wasn't. And I remember the rehearsals were, because I was about getting around 60 then, and that was a pressure, just the stress,
You've had the opportunity to create new works as well, be part of new operas.
Yes.
You played an Aboriginal character,
Yeah.
Mundit, in
How would I get on today, blacking up?
Yeah, it would be, well, it's the same with the Otello, isn't
Yeah.
it, singers?
Yes, he was white. They were all white Otellos. Yeah. It's a strange.
Cast for the voice, of course, cast for the vocal quality, I
Yes.
suppose, but it's a different era now, isn't
Yes,
it? And it's culturally appropriate casting.
Yeah, Monostatos is another one. I wonder what happens with that.
Yeah.
In Magic Flute.
Yeah.
I haven't seen any. I used to always remember the blacking up and the face. I can remember playing Monostatos in Brisbane in December, and I blacked up. And it was so hot and steamy, you know what Brisbane's like.
Yeah.
By the time I got off, it was all down on my shirt,
Running.
and I had white chin and white nose.
I bet you're popular with the wardrobe department.
Yeah.
So Dalgary, was that a good piece?
Well, I don't know really. James Pemberthy, I don't know. I've got a book out there that it was taken from, Keep in My Country, by that Mary Durack.
Right.
It's got an inscription to Gregory Dempsey, the first person to play an Aboriginal on the operatic stage. So, and now I think I don't think it was ever done again.
No.
It was a one actor,
Right.
and it was done with at the Somerville Auditorium in not Queensland, Western Australia,
Perth. Yeah.
Perth, and
Pagliacci in the second act. Pagliacci.
in the second half. Yeah, I sang Beppy in the second half. I used to have a lot of trouble getting all the black up.
Getting cleaned up for Act 2.
Yeah.
And Richard Rodney Bennett's The Mines of Sulphur, that was a new one,
Yes, that
wasn't
was a great thing for me. It was a marvellous thing to do. It was that was the sort of thing that I liked. That sort of murderous type person, you know. It was a character that was like, you know, I was playing a baddie in a cowboy film, you know.
Villains are the best roles, aren't they?
Oh, definitely, definitely. Always had success with villains.
Did you have a favourite role? One you enjoyed or look forward to returning to?
I suppose just being in Master Singers.
That epic storytelling.
It's a wonderful, wonderful thing. Far more for me than The Ring. While The Ring is fantastic, I'm not saying that. Master Singers, you know, he'd written 3 of the Ring cycles before he started on Master Singers, and I think he did Master Singers as a, you know, as it's a comedy, I suppose, and some wonderful characters in it. What's his name? I keep saying Hanslick. The Beckmesser is a wonderful character, and Sarks, all real. The music for me is real, and I worked with a bloke called Glenn Byam Shaw, who was an old English actor.
Yep.
He was wonderful to work with, you know. No, Master Singers was just an amazing experience. I used to stand on the stage at the start of the 3rd act for that wonderful interlude, you know. Just amazing. And a bloke called Norman Bailey sang the sax, and he was a wonderful bloke to work with. Probably not the greatest sax of all time, but he was such a warm person, perfect cast for a character. Yeah, wonderful piece.
You've sung all around the world, in America and Europe and
Yes.
Australia.
Yeah.
Do audiences differ? Do you find?
I don't know. San Francisco was a bewildering place. I mean, it's a huge place. It's 3,000 people, and I thought, oh gosh, can they hear me? Can they hear me? And that sort of fight you have when you get into a new venue. That's you know.
You've got to recalibrate your performance,
Yeah.
I suppose, don't you?
Yeah. And it's strange. The reverse thing is Sadler's Wells on tour always went to Stratford upon Avon, and the Stratford Theatre was shocking. It was dead, just dead. I don't know if it was made that way, but you know, you'd sing, and it was gone. There was no reverberation. I think if singers can't hear a bit of themselves coming back, you start to fight, and that the thing of, especially it's like, I always remember doing Yennefer at Covent Garden with John Vickers, who had just this huge voice, the biggest voice I think I've ever been on stage with, massive sound, and he'd sing and I'd have to sing something and I'd say, back off a bit. If I try, I want it to go, like he automatically went, and that sort of thing is hard, that sort of thing of singing, you know. If you think you're not being heard is a hard thing for you to cope with, you know. and it's mainly theatres. Covent Garden was lovely to sing in, and indeed the Coliseum was marvellous. I love Sadler's Wells, and even the the Sydney Opera House, the Opera Theatre, that's quite good to sing in. The concert hall's better.
Just giving the acoustics.
Yes, the acoustics of it. It's that thing of you open your mouth and it's why people sing in bathrooms, isn't it?
Yeah, the acoustics.
Yes.
Yeah. And as a singer, you're singing over a 40-piece orchestra. You're unmiked, and you've got to fill that space.
Oh yes, yeah. That's what I always think about now, because towards the end of my career, I was singing My Fair Lady and Countess Maritza. I sang quite a few
operettas.
Yes, and you were mic'd up, and everyone's mic'd up, and I suppose people that go to those shows expect everything to be mic'd up, and it works. It doesn't for me. It just sounds,
false.
Phony that someone walks off stage and just as loud as when they're on stage, that sort of thing. I mean, at the end of Bohème and they're walking off and singing the duet with the top C, you want it to sound...
To disappear into the distance.
You don't want it to still be... Yeah.
And remember not to say anything once you get into the wings in case your mic's not turned off.
Yes. Lots of people have
got into trouble.
Yeah, cursing the producer or something. Yeah. I've heard, there's been a couple of times I wasn't involved, but I know that someone said about a certain conductor who will remain nameless. Why is he doing that tonight? And this was in one of those musicals.
All right.
And the conductor said, "I can hear you!" At a rehearsal it was from the pit. He brought out, "Yes, I can hear you."
I've just thought of it. Andrew Green.
Andrew Green, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, a lovely bloke and a lovely conductor.
Right.
He was a lovely conductor. I did quite a few things with him, yes.
So you had the A, right?
Hmm?
You had the A there.
Yeah, A, yeah. Andrew Green, yes, yeah.
Greg, this has been an absolute delight this past hour.
Have we done an
with you.
hour?
It's been an hour. How about that?
God.
Yeah, it's good.
Good.
So thank you for your time and all the best.
Was that all right? Was it?
I think that was brilliant.
Oh.
Don't you? Did you have a good time?
Oh, well, I'm all right when people ask me questions.
Right.
I'm awful if I've got to stand up and say what I've done.
Yeah.
I think questions are easy. I did a couple of things on 3MBS with, what was his name? Doug Beecroft.
Right. Yep.
Yeah, lovely bloke. And he asked the, questions.
Well, it's good. It's good just to be prompted and reminded, and
Yes, like
then
you did then. We're
triggers
excellent.
a wonderful career.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, good.
My thanks to Maestro Brian Castles Onion for the introduction to Gregory Dempsey and for the incredibly detailed research he provides to the Stages podcast. Brian is a great champion of our operatic heritage, and Stages is thrilled to have his ongoing support of the classical episodes we feature. Thanks, Brian. You've been listening to Stages with Peter Ayres. Please take time to rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts. And remember to subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Whooshka, Spotify, or wherever you find your podcast listening. Check out the Stages website too at www.stagespodcast.com.au. There you'll be able to find many conversations with creatives that have been recorded over the past 3 years. You've been listening to episode 194 of Stages. Thanks for joining us. I'll catch you next time.
Greg Dempsey, contestant number 15 in Mobile Quest, sang Lolita.